Hello, beautiful divine souls. Welcome. Welcome back to Goddess of Rebirth, the show where we uncover the hidden truths of our emotional landscapes. I'm Monica, your host, and today we have a very special guest, a woman whose wisdom and insights have transformed the lives of many. Anabel, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hello. Hi. I'm so grateful to be here with you and ready to have an incredible conversation full of value and hopefully will really ignite something in everyone's bellies, or at least in one person's belly.
Oh, we will for sure. Annabelle is an embodiment mentor and a womb shaman. She's passionate about the full spectrum power available through feminine embodiment. She's a willing guide for courageous women who are ready to create a great shift in both their lives and their ancestral lineage. Ooh, that's such a beautiful line of work. So powerful. Tell us a little bit about that. What does it mean to live in the fullest spectrum of power available through the feminine? What does that mean?
Oh, okay. Let's go with the big questions. Yes. So one of the things, I often talk about is this full spectrum power that women have. And when we look at history, so much of that has been written off, has been suppressed, has been cut off. And so for many of us women, we are actually living in a time where a lot of these things are coming back. There's a remembrance, a feminine remembrance that is emerging. And, this is where like the ancestry piece comes in and all of that, because culturally, ancestrally, we have had to kind of play small, in a way that allowed us to survive in a patriarchal society and patriarchal programs, right? And so when we're talking about the full spectrum of women, I am speaking specifically and reclaiming those aspects of us that were left behind somewhere along the line, whether that is through our sexuality, our sensuality, our emotional intelligence, our intuitiveness, our knowing, our interconnectedness with the earth, and just all these available sources of life force are there because they're there. We're just unaware of them. Therefore, we don't utilize them. And there's a part of us that feels disconnected, that feels like we're missing something, or that we're alone. For many of us, the lack of belonging, the lack of tribe, the lack of community, all of these things make us feel like we are alone. Everything's up to us. And of course, living in a society, growing up in a culture where independence is prized, it's rewarded, bigger, better, faster, more. And we have forgotten that actually has to have a harmony with what's going on in our inner worlds, what's going on when we go into the earth, into our roots, into our bodies, because we are distracted by all the glitz and glamour that's outside, right? So full spectrum is actually being able to live your inner world and your outer world and bridge those together so that you're able to express what you are here as a god, goddess, creator given blessing. What are you here to walk? What are you here to share and contribute to this remembrance?
That is so beautiful and so powerful. It may sound to some of us perhaps that there's so many parts, the community part and the healing part and the emotional intelligence part and the healing the earth. But then can we put it all into the power of the womb, the center that reconnects us back to all of these parts of ourselves that are disconnected somehow? Tell me a little bit more about why is the womb so important when we're
Yeah.
speaking about power and feminine power.
So, the womb is, and I utilize the womb blueprint as, a big foundational piece of my body of work, because the womb is actually the center of creation. Not only Yes, we create babies, right? And one of the things I love to share is, when we're pregnant, when that baby is being conceived, gestated, and grown in our bellies, we don't wake up every day thinking about what's the next part that we're gonna grow today, right? So I don't wake up and I'm like, today I'm gonna work on the fingers, or I'm gonna design the fingerprint, or I'm gonna grow an arm. I just know there's an innate intelligence that is in that womb space that is developing that baby, and it's using my body. It is using the ways, that literally like being woven from my flesh, right? And so, what is my job in that creative process is that I support myself, that I make sure I'm healthy, that I make sure I get the rest, because of course it's being created from me. I love using this example because this is exactly what the blueprint is, to create in a feminine form. So, what we've been taught most of the time is to create from our head. It's like we have an idea, then we get out there and we go chase it, we hustle, and so that's how we make it happen, which is a very masculine way of leading, very masculine way of creation, which is beautiful in its own way. However, when women lives her life in this way, it's sustainable. This is why we have so much burnout, adrenal fatigue, all these autoimmune disorders, thyroid, all of these different things that happen because the body is not in its original thriving essence. And so, we'd have access to that, make it happen, chase, do all that, because that's also a survival aspect of us. It's kind of like if you see your child is in danger, there's something that kicks in you, this adrenaline, and you're going to do whatever it takes to keep that child safe. However, if you're living your life in that way every day, day in, day out, there's an exhaustion that's going to come about. And I think that in the way that we've been moving in the world as a woman, that's what we're experiencing now, this exhaustion, because we're not honoring and connected to what actually nourishes us. We're depleted. And so when I talk about the womb, I love using that because not only can we use our womb space to create babies, which is probably the only time we really think about our womb, other than when we're bleeding, perhaps. But that there is an intelligence there that doesn't only support us in creating a child, it supports us in creating a book, a business, a movement, a life, an environment. And once you start going down the rabbit hole, you find all these ways in which we can utilize it as an ally to support us in living thriving lives in a feminine way. And of course, we have our seasons, right? Like we go through a 28-day in general, 28-day process, right, of hormonal changes. And every week is a different quality, a different aspect of ourselves that comes to the forefront. But most of us are very disconnected from our cycle. The only, we're aware of our cycle when we want to get pregnant, or when we're bleeding and we're cramping, and it's uncomfortable. And that's one of the primary foundational ways in which we've been disconnected from our power, is by forgetting the power of our cycle. Because our cycle, just like it moves through those four aspects of it, it mimics nature. Nature moves through four seasons, right? We have our spring, we have our summer, we have our autumn, and our winter. And a woman's body moves through those seasons every single month. We have our spring, we have our summer, ovulation, we have our autumn, and then we have our winter, which is our menstruation. And if we are able to harness the power of that, then we're able to, at the end of every month, release what didn't serve us that month, get clear about what we're bringing into the new month. So it's like an opportunity to renew ourselves and let go of those things that don't serve us. I love this aspect of getting in touch with our cycle, because I feel like this is such a simple way, to very practical way, to get attuned to our feminine wisdom. And anyone can start there. And then you can see the agendas and the ways in which it's to disconnect us from that, to tell us that we're too much, we're not enough, you're too emotional. You have your emotions are too big. Here, get on birth control so that you can calm your hormones, or all these things. And what birth control does is that it actually, even from its inception, was that birth control. But it wasn't just about humans. It was about controlling what we can create in the world as women. It was what being able to kind of numb us so that we would forget. So instead of only the lobotomy thing that happened, or the burnings that happened, now it's, let's just give you this pill, or this method, so that you can be calm, you can be small, you can know your place, you can be agreeable, all of these things that actually, as a woman in her full spectrum power, is a threat in many ways, you know?
Oh my, that's so deep, so profound. How can individuals reconnect to the power, the wisdom, and the presence of the womb? How can we get that back?
Yeah. So I feel like, that we've been talking about the cycle. That's a great way to start, getting, perhaps like finding an app that helps you track it. But if you have the ability to do that, because sometimes when you're on birth control, you're not necessarily able to track that. But if you do, that's a wonderful way to start, so that when you're, when you're ovulating, when you're menstruating, what your body's moving through, and then journaling about what is happening in each of the phases for you. Like, I'll give you an example for me, the like when I'm ovulating, I'm a yes to everything. I'm like, yes, let's do that. Yes, I'm up for that. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of doing things, right? When my menstruation time comes, I don't want to do anything. I want to rest. I want to relax. And there's a wisdom inside of that, because through a lot of indigenous cultures, and they knew that this was, and they acknowledged this, was that this was a psychic time for woman. This was a dream time for woman. When she was bleeding was a time when she would actually receive dreams and guidance for the tribe, for the community. And we're disconnected from that. So this is, like, even just starting in that. So whether you can track it or not, when you're menstruating, slowing down and just tuning into that inner world a little bit more, instead of like trying to just get rid of it as fast as possible, but slowing down, resting, asking the body, what do you need to feel nourished? What do you need to rest? Because that's the other part of us that has really been forgotten, is the ability to dream. And because we don't dream, we don't trust our dreams, and then we don't have the backbone or the vessel to actually follow, birth our dreams out into the world. So I would say, just start. I mean, that's something simple that anyone can do. Having meditations where you're actually bringing your awareness down into your belly, not just into your heart. Because we have these three power centers: our mind, our heart, and our womb space. Many traditions speak of this. They call it the Dantian, the 1 point. Of that belly wisdom. And even in science now, through neurology, they're talking about, how the gut is the second brain, right? So it's like this aspect of, like, there's so much information and wisdom there, and everybody's going to articulate it in a different way. But we're talking about a power center that is available to us, that we have not been really tuned into.
Oh, and there's another aspect to it too, the sensual part, the pleasure that women have, at least the women in my circles, the women that I have been modeled after. There's this disconnection from the power of the woman, this disconnection from the pleasure, not only of the sexual activity, but pleasure in life and about everything that we experience in general.
Mhm.
How, tell me a little bit about your work in terms of women's sensuality and pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much for that question. This is a big topic, because this is also a part of us that's like, yes, we are disconnected from it, and yet it's one of the things that's most used, that's most sold, like sex sells, right? And there's I love starting with saying that there's a difference between sexuality and sensuality. Sensuality includes sexuality, but you can have sexuality without sensuality. And that is because, when we're talking about the sexuality, we're talking about, the kind of the sexiness, the act itself, that aspect of like the organs or sex organs, right? And so anyone can have sex, really. That's it doesn't require presence, intimacy, any of that. And yet, this is where we have disconnected from the true meaning, the sacrament, the holiness, and the beauty of our sensuality. That when the sensuality is about being connected to our senses. That's really where the word comes from, you know? And in order for us to be connected to our senses, we have to be connected to our felt self. A lot of times when we are in our healing journeys or in our awakening journeys, we're tuned into the known self. We're like getting wisdom, we're reading books, we're listening to podcasts, we're doing all these things, so it's almost like we're feeling ourselves like, oh, I'm getting to know myself through this knowledge. Well, when we're talking about the felt body, well, that sense body, it requires us to go into the body and to feel, to sense, to become aware of those like subtle ways in which, this is where our intuition lives, right? This is where you can feel someone's good or bad vibes. This is where you just have that gut knowing. And so this is where the senses are really alive. This is when we can go out for a walk and actually feel the breeze and connect to the sense of it, and connect to nature in that way versus just I'm going to just go on a walk from A to B and not even notice anything that was there, right? So, when we're cultivating that sensuality, we have to move into our bodies. And that's very uncomfortable for a lot of women because we have a lot of stories in our bodies that are not necessarily pleasant. There's especially specifically speaking into the womb space, this is where woman holds violation of boundaries. This is where woman holds ancestral anguish. This is where woman, holds the resentment. All of these things that could be lineage long are held in that center. And so when a woman wants to tune into her womb space, the power of it is scary because first you've got to be initiated into it. And that's what we've also lost this ability of, we used to have rites of passage, initiatory processes to initiate us into wisdom, to prepare us to hold it, to prepare us to be with it. And now, because we don't have those, it's too scary really to go there with not knowing how, not having the tools, or at least a guide that can, that can be there for you when you are in that upheaval, when the painful things come up that can guide you through it. So this is why we stay away from it. But thing is that in order for us, like our womb really is like a volcano of raw power. And it really is raw power. You can do with raw power good or not. It's going to be up to you, right? Like who you are. And it's kind of like money, like money is not good or bad. Money is the person that has it is going to amplify who they are, not necessarily, the money itself, because that's a tool. So it's the same thing with that raw power in the womb is that it's going to amplify who you are. But when your commitment and your devotion is to healing, to bringing back into health your lineage, your life, even your life, let's not even go down the lineage yet, but anytime that a woman comes to her womb, there's also going to be a lineage piece because that's our mother line. We existed as an egg in our grandmother's ovaries. So we were not just born of our mother, and then our mother existed in our great grandmother, right? So there's an unbroken maternal line that has passed down these energetic blueprints. And this is what there's going to be pain, there's going to be dead dreams, there's going to be suppression, but there's also going to be a life force that has been trapped there that we get to reclaim. And that's the real treasure, that real treasure of myself, Annabelle. But I am the strength of my mother, my grandmother, my great grandmother, and their dreams can now come and live through me as well and support me. So it gives a sense of like, there's all this line of women behind me supporting me in order for me to like be at the forefront of the line, and so the power in the womb is just, something that it's experienced as well. It's so hard to articulate what it is, but it's a return to your primordial magic, your primordial power as a woman and in a woman's body.
Mm. What is your vision of women leadership for the future, where the womb is honored, we're connected with the wisdom? What is your vision?
Yeah. Oh, my dream, my vision. Yes, I like to think of things generationally. I feel like that's a power that as a woman, we also don't exercise, is to know that sometimes what we're doing in our lifetimes isn't necessarily even we're going to see the fruits in our lifetime, right? There are aspects of it that we are creating an inheritance for the generations that are to come. And so there's that piece there, where I feel like as we reconnect to the womb, we're also opening up an energetic portal for the future generations to get there quicker, to actually, and I'm already seeing this, Monica. Like I have, women who are 18, 21, they're already asking the questions that I wasn't asking till I was 33. I know older women that they were living that, and then when they would meet me at 40, they're like, wow, you're already asking the questions that I started asking at 50. And so there is already that aspect of it, which makes me so joyful to witness anytime that I see that. And then there is a more practical world application, I feel, of like what women's leadership can do. I really do believe that women is the pillar of a society, of the fabric of society. And I believe that we have the power to shift the way that that society moves and what is allowed and what isn't. And it's a big vision, because when we look around, there's still so much suppression around this. And yet also when I look out into the world and I see the chaos that we're in, I see the like all the incredibly, the upheaval that we're in, the trauma, the pain, the war, the all of these things. What I'm also seeing is a birth happening, a rebirth happening. And if you're a woman, and again, bringing it back to the body, when we're giving birth, when that baby's coming through, like it's painful. It's painful. It's chaotic. You don't know if you can do it. You kind of want to give up, but you don't have a choice because that baby's going to come out one way or the other. Right. And I feel like that's what we're in right now. We're in a deep menstruation that is allowing us to rebirth new ways of leadership, new ways of being. Okay. And so that's exciting for me. And also what I'm seeing is that there's so much, if we look into the leadership, even just on a business perspective, so much of business has been around like brick and mortar businesses, of like, I set up the shop and here it is. And what we're seeing now, because of the internet, because of the web, we're seeing that now anyone can start a business. The creative access is here now. Now it's not about who can help you, get this or that, or what Ivy League school did you go to. There's a playing field that has opened up that wasn't available before. And why I'm bringing that up is because I feel like this is where women get to thrive, in the sense of as a woman, you used to have to leave your home, leave your child, go, daycare, go to work and work on someone else's dream, support someone else's vision, and then come home and still have to do all the things as a mother, as a woman, as a wife, right? And so I feel that now it's like there's a creative opening that has happened where now woman can design her business to support her womanness, to support that she's a mother, that she is a wife, that she is a sister, a daughter. Like all these aspects of ourselves now don't need to be abandoned, but rather now we get to recreate what does that look like? What is that business that's going to allow me this aspect of me to thrive in that leadership space? I really feel like for women, it's really life changing times that we're in. And then this other aspect that I'm witnessing, Monica, is because I work with a lot of like real estate business people, and what I am seeing in that space as well is that there is a movement now happening where now we're talking about emotional intelligence. We're talking about like, how do you train yourself so that people can trust you? So it's going beyond the deal making thing, right? Now it's actually like stepping into qualities that are more of feminine essence, like trust, like intuition, like visioning, like centering in your body. All this biohacking speak, they're talking about the flow state, but a woman in her magic, she is a flow state. She's in her flow state because she can actually be in different places at different times. We're gifted in that, where we can have 10 things going on and we can move inside of that. Where in a more masculine perspective, it's a focus into a single point, and that's been a weakness for us, right? Like, oh, I got all these things. I'm confused. I'm overwhelmed. Well, now I'm really feeling like this is what's happening is that the world is now shifting. There's a reality shift that is happening that, yes, it feels chaotic. It feels painful. There's a lot of loss, and that's another theme, we can get into as far as feminine wisdom. But there's so many things that are changing now that this is the time where we get to recreate ourselves and what we design for ourselves, what we're available for, and to really get to know, who am I? Like, who am I with all of this external conditioning as a woman? What is healthy for me, what isn't. And it's so beautiful to see that because when I got into this womb work about, I would say now maybe it's about 14, 15 years ago, but when I first came into it, no one was talking about these things. It was weird. I mean, my family was like, what kind of weird shit are you into right now? you know, the womb, why everybody thought it was around fertility, process, but no, it's the fertility of the woman's soul, of the woman's body to create, to be fruitful, to be a blessing, to be that which we were created to be. Woman multiplies everything, so that's what we are. We have an amplification power. But when we're disconnected from that, we think we're not good enough and we're trying to get power in external ways, by giving away our authority to authority figures, male figures, putting it on other people, where it now we get to say like, no, I can be sovereign, I can be in my body, I can be in my power. And it doesn't mean that I'm a bad woman, or any of that. And I can be in my sensuality, I can be alive without it having to mean sex. That's just an amazing thing that we get to partake in. It's a byproduct. But the sensuality is the flow of the life force in a woman's body.
Well, there's so many different things that I would like to talk to you about right now,
It's a
but
web.
I know. I love that analogy you use of like seeing all the chaos and all the pain in the world and thinking, I'm in the process, no, or collectively, we're in the process of giving birth to something greater and better. And something that I've seen you speaking a lot about is grief. And how, tell me a little bit, what is your connection with grief? Why is it important for us? And how is it collectively not being processed as it should? Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I say that I'm in a lifelong apprenticeship with grief because for me, grief first visited me through the loss of my father at 9 years old. So that was kind of what like ignited that thread. Now I was 9 years old, so at that time I didn't understand, no, or there was no processing space for it. And so what I realized later in my healing journey, and this was at like 29, 30 years old, was that this was still living in my body, this loss, this longing, this pain. And I had just kind of pushed through it all my life and ignored it. And that was a painful part of returning to the body, which is what we were talking about. There's so many things there. When I began to working with grief, what I realized, and now, years into this work, and why I'm such a champion of this work, is that when we start to work with grief, there's different layers of grief that we're working with. So we all have a way in which we access it. So I know, Monica, you mentioned that you had a recent loss of a loved one, and so sometimes that's how it's going to come visit us. Or it can also be, loss in a relationship through a divorce. We go through so many losses in life because life is change. Just like the trees, every autumn, they lose their leaves. They surrender their leaves, right? And when we're talking about being seasonal, we have seasons in our lives too. And so all those losses that we've experienced, because we're not uh really trained to work with loss, with death, with rebirth, then what happens is that we're just kind of shove it away. It's like, okay, time to move on. We empower ourselves with the false sense of power, which is more about pushing through things, right? And then when we look at the clinical setting of working with grief, you have all these experts, quote unquote experts with grief, that say, these are the stages, 1 through 6 or 1 through 5, whatever there is, and you're going to go through this stage, and then at the end of it, now, like, move on with your life. It's already been a year, it's already been 6 months, whatever it is. And one of the things about grief is that grief changes us. We never ever go back to being the person that we were before that happened to us. The other thing that like irks me um about the way that grief is taught or held is that, there's all these well-meaning people that will tell you, how, well, be grateful for what has happened because this is leaving you a better person, or this is, whatever it is, like, being grateful. And I find that like so disrespectful to the relationship or to the loss itself, because one, you can never be grateful to have lost someone who means something a lot to you in your life. I could never be grateful that my father was killed. That's just not something that I'm like, I am grateful that happened. No, if I could change it, I would. Yet the magic, the beauty of working with grief comes that I find meaning from that. Not that I am grateful that it happened because it's making me a better person, but rather that through honoring that loss, that pain, that ache, that heartbreak, now I'm able to experience another aspect of me that can create meaning through it. And through that meaning, honoring that loss, right? Honoring that relationship. Because we never really lose relationships, they just change form. But because we're not trained to work with that aspect of ourselves, which is shape shifting, and again, like loss, death, we're kind of allergic to those topics. When you're in a grieving space, you feel lost, you feel left out, you feel isolated because it seems like no one gets it. Like no one understands the space that you're in, and everyone's trying to fix you. Everyone's trying to make it okay. And that's not what we need in that space. What we need in that space is actually to honor what has happened so that it can move through and cleanse us into meaning. And we have so many different layers of grief, again, like I said. So we have like losing someone, we have situational grief, we have earth grief, what is happening in the earth, and we have collective grief, like all the things that we're moving through as a collective human species. That there is so much death, there's so much things that are happening that we feel that doesn't affect me because I'm not there. But actually, when you are interconnected, when you're aware of that, you realize that all these things that seemingly move in other spaces, it's like a collective world weather. It comes in and it moves through our bodies because we're porous. We're made of water. We're not these solid beings that nothing can penetrate us. No, and we are influenced, but we don't understand, so we don't know. So we move to the head and we make stories. Oh, it must be the weather. It must be the weather why I feel this way, where it's actually something's happening in the other side of the world. It's heartbreaking. And I can feel that. And if I can honor that, I have spaces where I can utilize the art of grief, of lamentation to move that through my body. So it creates space so that it makes peace instead of trying to get rid of it or ignore it or, because it starts to mount in our awareness. So working with grief, and as you see, Monica, the workshops that I do with grief is because I want to bring that awareness that as a woman, we must grieve. We must grieve because there's so many things to grieve, and some people think they come to one workshop and they're like, oh, I'm coming for this. And then what they realize is that something deeper was bringing them there. And that's where they start. And then, it's like they come back again. But again, for me, that work's important because I really do, I attribute what I get to do in the world, how I get to express and feel about my life is because I'm able to grieve, is because I cry a lot, is because, that joy and that realness, it makes me real because I'm also in the grit. I'm not just in the love and light. If I lived in love and light all the time, I'd be in denial that I am a human, and that I am here in service. So it's a very powerful body of work to come into and to invite into our lives because it softens us. It allows us to drink from a deeper well of nourishment that we don't even know exists because we're afraid to look at it.
I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and she was saying how the world is selling this idea that we can stay trapped in a fake um ovulation time, because we're cyclical. We have this cycle. We go from like you said at the beginning, spring, summer, fall, winter, and grief to me looks like that too. Like there will be stages in my life where I will no longer be young, where I'll no longer be, when you're a mom, you grieve that loss of who you were before and now who you're becoming. And we don't allow ourselves to grieve. And so we're trying to stay in this happy time. I'm always forever. And that's not sustainable. That's not real. That's not authentic. And I feel like ancestrally we were able to, through rites of passages and perhaps rituals and perhaps I don't know, different practices, we were able to process stage by stage different levels of grief that now we have lost. Do you know of any practices or ancestral wisdom that allows us to get back to that gradual relationship, if I may call it, with grief that is a constant companion and we can, be there with it?
Yeah. So one of the things that I do myself, is like I have a monthly grieving ceremony for myself. And that has been, I've been doing that now for many, many years. And every time I miss that, I can feel that I get overwhelmed easy, that I get paralyzed because I feel helpless. And so I know that creating spaces where you can work with grief. And how you work with grief, all you have to do is just set the intention, create the space, light a candle, and then go inward and start to tune into like those losses that you're carrying. For many of us, that's going to be very there waiting because we haven't worked with it, right? And there's so many ways to tune into that, because sometimes it can be like, right now, I mean, pick a disaster in the world, like that's it, as simple as that. Like where, when you tune into like, what is heartbreaking for you? And actually hold that heartbreak and tune into that heartbreak and be with it. Like cry, let it move through your body. How does it feel? And then the other thing that I think it's really important working with grief is that we have containers, and this is why a ceremony space is important, because we also want to make sure that we start to train our bodies in a way that this space is for grief. And when this is closed, we are now, out in the world, or doing our things out in the world. So and I would even suggest pairing that with menstruation. Because if we are in our menstruation days, let's say our first day of bleeding, and then for those of you who are not bleeding anymore, I want to say this, you can also do that. And if you don't have a womb, if you had a hysterectomy, a partial hysterectomy, you can also do this. Like womb wisdom is not about having the organ, and it's not about it being, in the bleeding stages. There's different stages of that. But when we create that space, that womb space for grief, we're able to move some of that energy and create space in ourselves, that we become more emotionally available, because you're not so overwhelmed. You're not like walking around everywhere full of this like heartbreak and pain, and then now someone says something and touches a thread in you, and now you're just, reacted, or kind of threw up what should have been thrown up in a grief ceremony. And instead you do it, we're doing it to each other all the time, road rage at the supermarket, because we have low tolerance and no patience. Because why? We are not giving that to ourselves. And when you're impatient with yourself, when you don't have tolerance for yourself, you hold yourself to like these standards, then you're also doing that to everyone else around you, And so there is ways to work with grief. That's one. And you're so right about, we used to have these rites of passage. There are still communities that hold communal grief as a way of life, and this is like my dream space for the grief work, is that we return to this communal grief. Grief is not meant to be carried alone. Grief is meant to be held in community. This is where, as women, we carry so much pain. But when we come together and we acknowledge that, not only do we become more real with each other, like forget these masks, and when we come to the grief events, that's one of the things, like leave your mask at the door. Nobody here cares what you do out in the world or what you have in your bank account. We're showing up as women who are here to grieve. We're here to remember an ancient art that our body knows already how to do, and we are catching up to. And when we come together in that, it's the power of community, of being able to come into groups and do that work. And the other thing I was going to say with that is that there's an aspect also that cuts us off from community, because it says, if I'm a sensitive being, I feel too much. When I go to groups, I take on their stuff. Like I'm overwhelmed by their energy. And this is a sign that there is a lack of grounding in your body. There's a lack of grounding in your body that is not um, allowing you to be present, but rather be sucked into the vortexes of others. And I think that this is also a way in which we are divided, in which it's like, no, I can't be in that because it's too much for me, or it's too overwhelming. But the reality is that when we are alone, when we think we're alone, that's when it's too much for us. That's when we're overwhelmed because we are not designed to be by ourselves. We need others. We're relational beings. And when you're in a group where, there's a realness about the human journey, it's so beautiful and amplifying. But you can start that in your own home for now, because so many of us still need to even tune into it's okay to cry. It's okay to have emotions. And so no matter where you are, you can begin to work with grief, and we all carry heartbreak. I don't think I've ever met anyone who's like, nope, I've never had a loss. I've never have, been heartbroken.
It is part of our human experience. It's part of what, and it's also part of what makes this life beautiful. Because if there wasn't the the sadness, and there's so much beauty in the depths of grief, I feel like you mentioned it before, when I lost my brother, I felt like there was a level of love that I experienced that I have never experienced before. And there were things that I saw so differently after he was gone, that I was like, how was I missing all of that? It woke me up. It brought me back to the beauty of life and the world in general.
That's beautiful, Monica, because that's right on the goal. Grief softens us and it opens our eyes to the love and the beauty that has always been there, but we were not seeing, we were not attuned to because of whatever reason, whether circumstantial or experiential, whatever it was. That's one of the beautiful things about that our loved ones, when they pass on, they gift us, is this aspect of opening us deeper into love, into that softness. Of course, it's painful. And that's if we allow ourselves, right, to go there. But there is it, I mean, and I can just imagine a world where instead of just um spewing this anger at each other, we actually sat and felt the depths of the pain of how divided we are, of all these agendas that put us against each other emotionally, and how that would soften us, and we'd be able to get perspective in that neither side is right or wrong. We're both right and we're both wrong. Can we begin from there? Because even with men and women, I mean, choose your topic, right? Like there's so much division in all of these things, but until we're able to just drop into the body, into the grief of what we are missing, into that longing, that how did we get here, and tuning into that, that's where I feel like the real conversations can emerge around what we can create in society. And of course, that's why I say that I feel like women are leading this conversation, and we're leading it with our bodies first. And then we are overflowing. And because we are multipliers, we're overflowing into our communities. We're giving permission to others, to go there. And this is, it is an organic process, but I feel is so powerful. And you know how energy works, that if there's enough momentum, it doesn't even become about the numbers individually. It becomes about the movement energetically that's happening. There's so much change that's happening in many ways. And it's both amazing and it's also very painful.
But I feel like everything that you have said so far, it's going to open new doors for people. Like the way that you speak about grief, it looks so bearable. We're so capable, and it's something that we should definitely give ourselves the gift to experience. And so there's so much wisdom in what you're sharing, and I do feel like sometimes that's all we need. We need somebody to point out the way, and we need to hear and say like, my body recognizes that.
Mhm.
That feels true. And I know that I need to sit down with my feelings, and I know that exactly what she's saying, that's what I need to do. And so yeah, this works so beautiful, so powerful. um One last question that I wanted to ask you is about motherhood. What are your thoughts in terms of being a mother in the feminine way, not the masculine and like controlling and like, but in a feminine way, and being the new way of leading the world? Because that's a position of leadership and authority, being a mother. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I believe that being a mother, that is the most sacred role and the most sacred position that any woman can have on earth. And of course, we all feel differently about it, right? But and I think that that's what all of these other threads are leading us back to, is honoring the mother, honoring that is the pillar of the home. If you have a healthy mother, you will raise a healthy child. If you have a mother that's depleted, a mother that's single, trying to make ends meet, unavailable, that this is what creates the generational trauma and fragmentation. And I really do believe that a big part of what's happening is this is what we're wanting to restore, the unit. We're wanting to restore the healthy mother, right? And I'm a mom of an 18-year-old now. And I will tell you that motherhood is the path of grief because my, being a mother has taught me about all the different cycles that I'm moving through with my son, and how to relate with him in different phases of it, because this is the time where our children, from being born to 25 years old, their changes are so rapid. They're going from, they're this person right now, and then in 3 months they're a completely different person. They look different, all the things. And I think that as moms, when you are unsupported, and this is by no fault of the woman, because this is not about shaming, right? Or guilting. We already carry so much mom guilt, but it's about understanding that our health is so important inside of being a healthy mother. And that means taking care of ourselves, checking in with us, and wherever, however, we can find the space to do that. Because if you're a single mom, this is going to be really challenging. And the lack of support for the mother also, it's a huge thing. So it's almost like we're trying to do what seems impossible with the limitations that we're in. But if we don't believe it possible, then we're not going to open the spaces for it. And as a mom, like for myself with my son, I had this ritual that I'll share with you, that I started doing, is that every year, the day before his birthday, before we celebrated his birthday, I would take that day for myself. So his birthday, it's November 8th. November 7th is my birthday, right? And so I would take that time and I would tune into like my body and remembering, like recalling like the changes in my body, how he felt moving inside my belly. And, and then when he was born, like all of that. And I buy myself a gift, whatever it is. Maybe it's just flowers, whatever it is, picking a flower. But just like as a mother, honoring this process that my body went through. And at that same time, opening to seeing him in this new age of that he's moving into, not holding him to what he's been, and then getting to know him there. So, for example, the big threshold was when he graduated high school, right? Turned 18. It's like, I'm no longer a mother of a high school child, or I no longer, have to wake up in the morning, take him to school, all that. It's like, and there's a loss in that for me as a mother. It's almost like I wrote this piece where I talk about like how a mother's journey is always about your child moving away from your body more and more and more out into the world. It's like the moment they come out of our bodies, their whole process is to move out into the world further from us. So many of us want to cling to that. And especially, I mean, I'm Hispanic, in my culture, there's so much single mother things happening. And what I see is that we, especially with our boys, like we raise boys and girls differently, right? But with our boys, it's almost like we want to give them everything, and we put our emotional burdens, like somehow they replace that partner, and so they grow up and they're still like, this is why we have a culture of like entitlement and like not honoring that feminine piece, because it's almost like we want to give them everything, we want to do everything for them. And then we also want to control. We want to control that, like, you're my baby. You're my baby. And we're treating them like babies up until they're, adults. And so there's a part of them that remains undeveloped, attached to the mother. And so this is why, like, looking at our mother role in all these different facets is important, that as a mother, what we are is a guardian, not a keeper. We are not keeper of our children. We are here to be a guardian of their process, and a guardian, a guide, a mentor, and what that means is that allowing them to experience life without us imposing our mistakes, imposing our rules and our laws and our control, because of course that's natural. We don't want them to suffer. But if they don't learn how to navigate heartbreak, how to navigate loss, then we're setting them up for failure, because then when it does happen, they will feel that something's wrong with them. They will feel that they're not prepared for it, because they don't know how to navigate the bigness of life, because they were probably in these little bubbles. And so that's why, like, and again, that's the grief of a mom, is like being able to see your kids make the mistakes, and all of you wants to, like, no, don't do it. But that's the gift. It's a saying, go try it. And your mom is always going to be here. So go try it. It doesn't work out, you can always come back home and try again. But I don't need to keep you hostage, because I am not doing you a service. I'm actually being selfish, because it makes me feel secure and better. And so there's that mother relationship is so important. And for many of us, we didn't have healthy mother relationships growing up, or father, and that's something important to look at as well, because our unconscious behaviors are driving from there. And 95% of our behaviors are being driven by our unconscious. And we're only about 5% conscious of our choices, right? And our behaviors. So having this aspect of motherhood for me has been incredible, because it's taught me a lot about being able to be a guardian of another's freedom and loving them fiercely in that, and also for myself, it's like, I also want to be free, in the sense of, I want to be free to experience who I am. I want to be appreciated and loved as I am, not what you want or what that person wants, or, especially as a woman, we're so used to morphing into what others want from us. And that's kind of what we're like, okay, no more. I think we're in that journey of self-realization, where it's like, no, who am I without all these roles? Because even being a mother, that's a role. Being a wife is a role. Being a daughter is a role. So we get to play all these roles beautifully. But at the core of it, when we take off all those things, because those could be taken away, I'm a mother now, but who knows, like, life may have other plans, whatever it is. And if I am only identified with the role, then that will completely destroy me, and I will forget who I really am, which is a child of the divine, here having an experience of, God moving through me into the world. So yeah, being a mom is to all the moms out there, I honor you. I love you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Because and this is how the mother can create change as well. Because like I said, we are raising these children. We are raising these world leaders that are making these decisions, and so not to put the whole pressure on us, but what if they grew up more aware and attuned to their environment, that they cared about community, that they cared about, their own feelings? What kind of world would that be? And we've had matriarchal societies. I'm not saying let's go back to a matriarchal society. What I'm saying is that it's time for the union. It's time to acknowledge that the masculine has gifts, the feminine has gifts, and we're both together through that union is how we're going to create change. Not, hey, now you messed up the world, now let me take the lead. That's we're doing the same thing. It's like we're going from one end to the other. It's about bringing into union, and the union has to begin with us, our inner masculine that stands up for ourselves, that protects us, that leads, and our inner feminine that senses, that feels, that loves, that overflows. And when that union is established, that, and of course it's a journey, it's not overnight or like one workshop. you know there's no magic pill. But as we become into that union awareness, we also start to see it out in the world. And we also start to hold our environments to that. And that's the beauty. So everything begins in the mother. I mean, we were all born from a womb. There's no organic human on the planet who has not come through a woman's womb. And yet it's desecrated. It's not honored. Now we have all these agendas to make fake wombs to grow babies, but when you understand that the essence of the soul moves through the womb, then when you value that, you will see that I mean, it's kind of ridiculous that what we think, that we can play God, that we can play creator without acknowledging the creation that we come from.
I'm so glad I asked you that question. I feel like moms need new role models and they need new spaces where they can feel safe to grieve and practices. And I'm so grateful you shared your wisdom. Thank you so much for being such a good guardian of the womb and the wisdom of the womb, and for all the work that you're bringing into life. It's definitely shaping a healthier relationship with ourselves, with the planet, a healthier future. We already know what an unhealthy reality looks like. And so starting to create the foundation of a healthier world is so magical and it's so powerful and it's so beautiful. And I'm so grateful that you're doing that work and that you are honoring this community and the audience, whoever is going to be listening to this podcast, with that same vision, that same path, wisdom. And I'm grateful for your
Thank
time
you.
and
Thank you, Monica. Thank you so much. And thank you for asking that question because, yes, you're right. That mother conversation ultimately is going to bring us to the divine mother of creation, to that divine womb that we've emerged from. And then also restoring that this is not anything new. We know this, we are designed for it. Monica, you and I share heritage, and there's a practice, when a woman gives birth, and I'm sure this is in very many traditions, you have that postpartum space of the 40 days, and then you have a ritual of like the closing of the bones, that's so beautiful. And all of those are grief. That's grief work, because that 40 days you get to, relax. Community's supposed to take care of you so that you can adjust to your new role, so that you can surrender what has been and enter in a nourished place into this mother role, and the ritual of the closing of the bones. That's like to close your energetic body from, that openness that happens into other world when you give birth, and honoring that you're no longer who you were before this child came through your body. and I want to highlight that for your audience here, is that I am not saying anything new. I'm not saying anything you don't already know. Your body knows this, and that's why we started with this. Like, I hope that these words, more than the words themselves, this frequency touches and activates the seed in you that already knows this wisdom that's been already passed down. Work really is to remember, because everything's here already. Everything is here now. It's just, can we become available for it?
Yes. Yes, 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 yes. Thank you so, so, so much. I'm so honored. I'm so excited. I cannot wait to release this to the world. My
Yeah.
hope for this discussion is that it will be a light and a portal for people who are navigating their own journey of healing and grief and discovering themselves and embracing their leadership and their feminine and reconnecting with their womb. Annabelle, thank you so much for your time, for your words, for your wisdom. Before I let you go, can you tell people where can they find you on the internet, or how can they find your work?
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you again for having me here, and for everyone who's tuned in. Thank you, and bless. If you can get in touch with me, I'm mostly active on Instagram. So at Anabel.Vizcarra. You can also find me on my website, AnabelVizcarra.com. And yeah, connect with me there. If some whatever touched you from this episode, send me a message and let me know. I love to hear, what activates people and what stands out for you at this time. And yeah, and I have like online offerings, and that also surface. And I'm also opening up a community. It's coming in June, so stay tuned for that. That will be a community you can join, subscribe to, and where I will be hosting all sorts of goodies, talking about the womb and grief and motherhood and all the good things. So thank you for that.
Beautiful, beautiful. And that brings us to the end of another profound episode of Goddess of Rebirth. A heartfelt thank you to Annabelle, to her wisdom, to her ancestors, to all the beautiful energies and the beautiful power that was in the room with us today. Thank you. Until we meet again, may you walk in beauty, may you shine your light, and may you always remember the power and beauty that resides within you.
I am thrilled to have you in my circle, and I am buzzing with excitement to conjure up some magic together. Remember, in Goddess Unleashed, we don't just talk the talk, we walk the mystical walk. Tune in and transform with me. Until next time, keep your spirits high and your magic untamed.